Up on Network Africa. The U.S. imposes sanctions on two senior Zimbabwean politicians over human rights abuses. South Africa confirms 4 more cases of the coronavirus, bringing the total to 17. Plus, the UN Secretary General calls for action on COVID-19 as the World Health Organization declares it a pandemic. Hello and welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Layo Adegoke. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on two senior Zimbabwean politicians over human rights abuses. The U.S. Treasury Department accuses Security Minister Owen Ncube of ordering the abduction and mistreatment of opposition supporters. The former commander of an elite army unit, Anselm Sayotwe, is also accused of ordering troops to shoot protesters, including an incident in 2018 when 6 supporters of the opposition MDC were shot dead. Neither of the accused have commented on the allegations. The two men are already barred from entering the U.S. and will now have any U.S.-based assets frozen. The Treasury Department says that the Trump administration would hold accountable corrupt Zimbabwean elites for the repressive and violent rule. Now, a crossing point between Mozambique and South Africa have been closed after clashes close to the border of both countries. Mozambican authorities say the only people now allowed to pass through the Ponta Douro border post are people who live in the immediate vicinity, such as Mozambican children who attend schools across the border in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. Mozambique's authorities are also advising people to avoid using the border crossing until the situation is normalized. South Africa now has 17 confirmed cases of COVID-19 after confirming 4 additional cases on Wednesday. The 4 cases are from KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, Gauteng and Free State. The Ministry of Health says all patients are in self-quarantine and have mild to moderate symptoms. The ministry is also working on reaching individuals that have been identified as these patients' contacts. Meanwhile, the case from Free State is the country's first case of local transmission of the coronavirus. A 32-year-old man had contracted the virus after coming into contact with a Chinese businessman. All other cases had been patients who had traveled abroad. Well, over in eastern Kenya, health authorities have given the all-clear to 12 foreigners who had been quarantined for 15 days as a precaution against coronavirus. Machakos Governor Alfred Mutua says all 12 arrived in the county east of the Kenyan capital Nairobi from China last month and were required to self-isolate on arrival. Kenya has no confirmed cases of the coronavirus. In the meantime, rapid test kits that scientists say will diagnose coronavirus within 10 minutes are being developed in a laboratory in Senegal's capital, Dakar, and expected to be available from June. Some 2 million kits are expected to be produced per year and will be distributed directly across the continent. The project at the custom-built Diatropics facility is a collaboration between British biotech firm Mologic and Senegal's renowned institute Pasteur de Dakar. Well, back here in Nigeria, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire, says the Italian who tested positive to the novel coronavirus in Nigeria will be discharged soon. He gave the assurance while briefing members of the diplomatic community on how Nigeria is curtailing the spread of the virus in the country. The minister maintains that there are only 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, and they remain the index case and the second person who was a primary contact of the index case. He also said that the federal government has not placed any travel ban on any country, but strongly warns citizens from traveling to endemic countries, including China, Japan, Italy, South Korea, and Iran.
We confirmed and reported the first case in Nigeria on the 27th of February by way of an Italian consultant who arrived from Milan through Lagos and traveled to Ogun State and reported sick just under 48 hours later. He has since been under care at the Infectious Disease Hospital in Lagos, and we have continued to test his viral load. He's doing very well. We are ready to discharge him as soon as the viral load is within acceptable limits. Nigeria has not yet placed any travel restriction or ban, but has strongly advised against non-essential travel to countries with high level of transmission, which we define now as China, Japan, South Korea, Italy, and Iran. We also routinely require travelers from these countries to be in isolation for 14 days after entering Nigeria. This will be revised always according to the assessed level of risk. Travelers from other countries are not expected to undertake special measures, but to report immediately to NCDC if they have symptoms.
Meanwhile, the Yobe State government has set up isolation centers at the Specialist Hospital and the Yobe State University Teaching Hospital, Damaturu, to contain any outbreak of coronavirus and other diseases in the state. The Commissioner of Health, Dr. Lawan Ghana, told journalists that the centers have 20-bed capacity and efforts are underway to establish more centers across the state. Yobe State government had procured ventilators, oxygen plants, and personal protection equipment to curtail possible outbreak of the virus.
We felt that when we meet with the League of Imams, we are very certain that in the 5 daily prayers and even in this traditional Friday prayers, they will be able to communicate the relevance of this with all their faithfuls. That's the message we brought here, so that sensitization, how to identify, how to prevent, and how the disease is transmitted, and also to dispel all kinds of rumors concerning this disease.
Well, the East African nation of Rwanda is guarding against the spread of coronavirus in the country by flooding its capital with portable wash basins at bus stops, restaurants, banks and shops across the capital, Kigali. Rwanda hasn't recorded any case of the virus so far, but neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo confirmed its first case on Tuesday. At the biggest bus stations in Kigali, passengers must wash their hands before they board buses. Even bus companies have set up several portable hand wash sinks near the vehicles. Other countries are also taking drastic measures. Seychelles has temporarily closed down the island to cruise ships. The DRC has shut down 2 hotels after a traveler tested positive for COVID-19. And Uganda is saying passengers arriving at the international airport will be sprayed with disinfectants. Well, now that the World Health Organization has declared the outbreak a pandemic, this means it is spreading fast across the world. In the light of this, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says this is a call for action for everyone everywhere, adding that as the world fights the virus, we should not let the fear of the virus go viral. In a message following the announcement by the World Health Organization, Guterres said the world faced a common threat in the coronavirus COVID-19. He said this declaration is a call for responsibility and solidarity.
All of us face a common threat, the coronavirus, COVID-19. Today's declaration of a pandemic is a call to action for everyone, everywhere. It is also a call for responsibility and solidarity, as nations united and as people united. As we fight the virus, we cannot let fear go viral. Together we can still change the course of this pandemic, but that means addressing inaction. The best science tells us if countries detect, test, treat, isolate, trace and mobilize their people in the response, we can go a long way to mitigating transmission. I call on every government to step up and scale up their efforts now. And since this is a crisis that affects everyone, we must all play our part. As we mourn all those who have lost their lives and the many families who are suffering, we must show solidarity with the most vulnerable, the elderly, the sick, those without reliable health care, and those on the edge of poverty. Let's move forward with resolve and without stigma. You can count on the UN to do our part. Let us overcome this common threat together.
Away from health matters to security, the threat of terrorism is often a consequence of development, humanitarian, human rights and security challenges that terrorist groups seek to exploit. That's according to the UN Chief of Political Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo. She says despite the intensified military operations against Al-Shabaab in recent years, it continues to pose the most persistent threat to security in Somalia and East Africa. For the permanent observer of the African Union to the United Nations, Fatima Kiari Mohammed, reinforcing efforts to ensure the conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism must be addressed in an integrated and comprehensive manner.
The threat of terrorism is often a consequence of development, humanitarian, human rights, and security challenges that terrorist groups seek to exploit. Security and military solutions are thus not sufficient. We must address poverty, weak governance, intercommunal tensions, gender inequality, youth unemployment, illicit activities such as trafficking in weapons and people, and the use of new technologies and social media to recruit, inflame, and incite. As terrorism has no borders, preventing and combating it requires strong multilateral cooperation. The United Nations remains committed to bringing member states together to share counterterrorism best practices, expertise, and resources.
The double-edged sword of technology is a reality we have to grapple with as techniques become more sophisticated and as we have seen with the reality of drone terrorism. Terrorist groups have also perfected the art of recruitment, facilitated by the use of cyber platforms and structural vulnerabilities such as poverty, ethnic and religious fissures, as well as competing political ideologies. We have recognized now more than ever that reinforcing our efforts to ensure the conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism must be addressed in an integrated and comprehensive manner. The need to focus more on prevention, while integrating security and law enforcement responses, as well as sustainable post-conflict stabilization and reconstruction. All member states must continuously seek to work together through approaches that do not cause harm, but rather reflect the principles that bind together our international community, and with a sense of solidarity and responsibility for the immediate and long-term welfare of all societies across the globe.
We'll have more on terrorism in Africa, but also hip-hop women forge a sisterhood collective to break down gender equality in Senegal. That's all in a moment. Please stay with us.